Did you know that each year 1 in 5 Canadians will face a mental health issue? We know that mental illness impacts individuals across all ages, education levels, income brackets, and cultures. We also know that mental health has an intergenerational effect on families. Hi, folks, and welcome to Do Local Good, a podcast created by United Way of Alberta Capital Region and the team of volunteers on the Gen Next cabinet. We feature stories and people from the Edmonton region to inform, inspire, and invite others to join us in building resilient and thriving communities. This podcast is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta, and we're grateful that we get to have this conversation on Treaty 6 territory and the Métis homelands and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Before we jump in, we'll be talking about a variety of mental health topics today, including addiction and intergenerational trauma. A reminder that if you or a loved one needs support during or after listening to this episode or any time, you can always contact 211 for resources in your area. Well, hi, everyone. I'm Natalie Steffel.
And I'm Rama Dalmar.
And today we want to dig into the reality of mental health and its intergenerational impact on families and overall well-being. And to do that, we are joined by Pamela Spurvey. So Pamela is an Indigenous Cree woman from Beaver Lake Cree Nation, and their home is in Edmonton. They are a mother of 5 and a grandmother of 5, and they're also someone who has lived and living experience. They currently work for Recovery Alberta as an Indigenous wellness coordinator and has been a financial literacy facilitator with Empower You for the last 13 years. I just want to read a piece of Pamela's story here that was provided when we were preparing for today's interview. So in Pamela's own words, I know what it feels like to struggle without financial security and how generational poverty can affect a person's life. As an adult, I struggled with the effects of intergenerational trauma and mental health and substance misuse. With the support of my culture and community, I was able to find myself again and have been on my healing journey for the last 17 years. I believe with the right supports in place, people can gain a sense of hope. Pamela, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Pamela.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's get right into it. Pamela, Thank you again for being here today. Your personal journey has been shaped by both your life experiences and the intergenerational trauma you've witnessed. How has that influenced your work in mental health and with addiction recovery?
It's had such a huge impact on how I choose to walk beside people in their their recovery journey from mental health and substance misuse. It's knowing what it's like to sit in that place of darkness and feeling hopeless is something it's nice for people to kind of have somebody to relate to that and to know that you can come out on the other side, because I know for me, when I was in that darkness, I didn't think it was possible. But when all the right supports are put in place and some people are helping you navigate these systems, change is possible, right? And so that's something that I try to do. And everything that I do is just show up for people. And that's the best thing that I can do, is just show up as myself with the changes I've chose to make and share them with others. Yeah.
That's amazing. You've spoken about some of the challenges, when we first met, about reintegrating families affected by trauma. Can you share more about how this process impacts mental health, especially for the parents and the children who are included in this conversation?
Yeah, for me, I can come from my own experience and tell you how that trauma really affected how I choose to show up for my children or for myself and anything that I did, and didn't really understand that it was trauma. That's a really big thing too, because when you're living in that state of fight, flight, or freeze, or you're living in those difficult environments, you don't know they're difficult because that's all you know. And so for me, like the abuse and my mom had a mom struggling with mental health and substance misuse, and all of that stuff was just, I thought every family went through that. So I didn't really realize what the word trauma meant because, like I said, I normalized it. So, but as I got older and started my healing journey, I really began to see how what my mom experienced really affected how I felt about myself, how I felt about people, how I felt when feeling safe, living in fear all the time, all of those things came from the struggle she went through and the struggle she went through with her mom. And so learning about that history actually really helped me understand that I actually did have trauma and helped me navigate that. People who helped me navigate that was a lot of the supports that I was reaching out to help me understand that those experiences were actually shaped my life. So they can have a profound effect on you. And even today, you know, I still feel effects of that trauma in certain situations that happen along the way in my life when I'm walking with my children and the struggles they're going through. I tried to help them navigate their life a little different, and so that they didn't have to wait as long as I did to try to figure things out. So, but I see the effects even with my grandchildren. So, you know, we say in our culture, like it takes 7 generations to change all the trauma that we went through. And I see that now that it's going to take some time for sure.
You know, and the supports that you're able to provide in the community work for, you know, how large is the intergenerational aspect of, you know, mental health and addiction? Is it something you see so common in your work?
It is so common in the work that I do. I was just talking about this with you, right? Talking about like how, you know, I work with people in a treatment center, and when they're coming in, and the pain that they're struggling with is just so intense for them, and it's been there for so long, right? Some of them have been in and out of treatment center 7 times, right? Or they just can't grasp trying to, I always say, be a normie, right? Trying to live in the normal world. It can be really difficult sometimes, right? When you are trying to navigate systems that have hurt you for so long. And so a lot of people come in with a lot of fear and anger and resentment and not trusting the systems. And I really see how that can break down somebody finding the supports that they need because you put the walls up, right? And so there's a lot of walls that people have up, and trying to navigate and break down those walls and rebuild a relationship with them and helping them trust the system or trust somebody. It's going to take time. And that's the biggest thing that I try to support people to understand, that we need time, right? You can't take something that's been there your whole life and think it's going to change with, you know, a 42-day treatment center, right? You know, like I think about that, and it took me living in 3 different treatment centers for almost 15 months before I was capable of living with my kids on my own. And a lot of people don't have that opportunity, and I'm really thankful that I did, because I don't think I would be able to have the sobriety that I have today without the long-term healing that I did. I needed that long-term healing in order to get to where I'm at today.
And you know, such an important topic. Do you see this too in, you know, other communities, whether marginalized or, you know, because it's something that you experience a lot with Indigenous communities, especially, you know, you coming from that community and being a part of it. But, you know, do you see this intergenerational trauma with immigrants and other marginalized communities too?
Right. And I think that was something that was really eye-opening for me as I continued to do this work as a frontline worker. I started to show up on different committees and started advocating. Actually, United Way was a big part of that. United Way, I became a discovery speaker with them. And I didn't realize how much United Way had put into all the programs I was part of. Like, it was their funding dollars that actually helped me have the things that I accessed. And so I was actually really grateful to be a discovery speaker for them and share with those donors and talk to them about, like, this is what your dollars do, and to kind of give them that real story. And when I started doing that, I started to notice how much we're not that different, you know, in that intergenerational trauma for you know, immigrants that are coming here and losing their homeland and their language, and they're trying to come in here and fit into a community that, you know, there's so many nuances that they have to face, and even our financial system, right? You know, trying to navigate how things are culturally different here, and I see that they all come from something too, right? Like when you think of the Black community and like you said, the newcomers and LGBTQTS community, like they all come from that. We all come from that intergenerational trauma in some way. So how do we begin to maybe relate better to each other and instead of separating us all the time? And so that's what I do. I try to do the best at that, is trying to help us show how much similarities we have instead of differences.
Yeah.
And I think that creates community when you do that, right? Instead of having that separation.
Yeah, and such a positive way to connect us all too.
Yeah.
So that we build that trust and build that sense of community.
Yeah. And so that's one of the things I really allow myself to do, is become more curious about other cultures and hear their stories and hear what is beautiful to them about their culture and integrating it into the things that I do and the people I support. My role is specific around, an Indigenous wellness coordinator, but my goal is to make sure that I'm very culturally inclusive with everything that I do to show the relatability. And I think that that's important to me.
We talked a little bit about, United Way and the support that they provide to communities, whether through funding dollars or programming. You've benefited from our conversation. You've let us know United Way has supported you in certain aspects, whether it's through the Empower You program or Boyle Street Community Services. How did these services help you rebuild stability in your own life, especially during those tough times?
I can't even. When I moved, I had to come back to Edmonton to be part of a program called Edmonton Drug Treatment Court, which is a restorative justice program. When I struggled with my mental health and addiction, I also got involved in the criminal justice system, and I was facing, some time in jail. And I was very fortunate to have this program in Edmonton that I was able to be part of, where I served my time in the community instead of a jail cell. And it saved my life. Like, it really saved my life because it allowed me to get the supports that I needed in the community. And when I started to try to navigate in this program, part of it was trying to get my kids back, and my kids were in care. And when my kids were returned to me, they were 13, 11, 8, and 1. And it was a really scary time for me because I hadn't really been a parent to my children for a while because I was struggling with addiction and mental health. And so I had 4 children come home, and we were unhoused. We were homeless, right? Like, I didn't have anything. I'd been couch surfing before I got into this program. So, I had to navigate trying to get my kids into school. My kids were also coming home with pain, right? They were coming home with their own pain and suffering from what they went through with the lifestyle I was living. And so I was just really didn't know how to parent. And so there was parenting courses I needed, getting my kids in school. I accessed tools for school, the hot lunch programs that the family center was talking about, like that. It was really difficult to try to navigate having food on the table, the food bank, right? Tools for school, coats for kids. Like, there was so many beautiful programs that stepped up and surrounded us with all these supports that I needed, and even getting a bus ticket, even childcare, so that I could get to the program that I was supposed to attend. And so, Boyle Street had the daycare, or Bissell, I think. Yes, Bissell Boyle Street, yes, had the daycare that was free because I couldn't afford daycares. So I was able to put them in there while I got better, while I accessed the supports that I needed. And when you're struggling with mental health, it's kind of like you have blinders on. You don't really know that there's all those supports out there because you just think everybody's against you.
Yeah.
And you don't think anybody cares, because I had a lot of stigma that was put on me. And so it made it really difficult for me to access these services. But I had some really good people that kind of helped me navigate the resources in Edmonton. And there was lots that I didn't know about. And, and they helped me get into parenting classes and different things that I needed, some counseling, family counseling, so there was quite a few services that I accessed to kind of get back on my feet, for sure.
Yeah, it's such an important topic, because when you're struggling, having the last thing you want to think about is all those other services that you need in order to get better.
Yeah.
How often do you see this in your work? And, is United Way like a place that you let people know about and be like, hey, these services are here.
Yeah.
We can support you. And there's other wraparounds available.
A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
You know, I notice that when people come into treatment, they don't know that there's things out there like E4C that they have the wellness network. You know, they don't know that Canadian Mental Health Association has the Recovery College or drop-in counseling sessions. You know, they don't know that there's parenting classes that they can access or Indigenous programs through Bent Arrow, right? Or, you know, there's so many things that people don't realize are there. And so recovery is complicated, right? It really is. People, it's very individual, right? Like I think that sometimes we try to put it into a box and think, you know, but it's not. Every person needs something different. And even as an Indigenous person, some people don't feel comfortable with Indigenous services because of the trauma that they experience through residential schools, right? So I don't make assumptions when I'm working with someone. I ask a lot of questions and really get to know them. And through conversation, help them know what is out there for them. And some people, you know, get a lot out of recovery meetings and some people don't. So letting them know that different types of recovery that they can do, like maybe it's going swimming, you know, like that's a part of recovery too, or going for walks. Like, so helping them know that recovery can be very, very different and helping them look at it in a holistic way and know that, you know, there's 4 parts to them. We have 4 quadrants, right? So mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual, and helping them navigate their medicine wheel to help them understand that all of those parts need to have something in them to create balance. And so supporting them to understand what works for them in those areas of their life is, it's been great, right? Because really it comes from them. I'm the only one. I always say, I'm just walking beside you. This is your journey and you tell me what you need. I never tell anybody what I think they need, because I had that happen to me way too many times where everybody created care plans and things that they told me that I needed. And when somebody tells you that you have to do something, it's not the same as you exploring it for yourself.
Right.
And so I needed the ability to explore that for myself. And I think things would have worked out a little more different instead of everybody telling me, if you don't do this, this is going to happen. And so very consequence driven. And it made me not want to do it, right? Because it wasn't what I wanted, right? It was what everybody else wanted. And so I try to give people choice. I think choice is important.
Your title of
Indigenous Wellness Coordinator.
Coordinator.
Yeah.
It's like connector, right? You're a connector to all these different supports that people, again, wouldn't potentially know about.
And even for myself, I don't know everything that's out there because things change, right? Unfortunately,
Totally. Yeah.
right? Funding, you know, it only lasts for so long. So services change.
Yeah.
So me as a support person for people, I make sure to go there and learn about the services, because if you hand somebody a pamphlet and say, here, go here, it's a lot different than saying, hey, you know what? I actually walked into Boyle Street and this is the services that were there. Jenny's the lady at the front desk, or,
Exactly.
you know,
Connect them to
and
a
then they're like,
person. Yeah.
it helps take away some of that anxiety for somebody if you support them, you walk through that door together instead of them having to do that by themselves.
That's intimidating.
It is.
Yeah.
It's very intimidating.
Yeah.
I know for me, I hadn't lived in Edmonton for a long time. I came from a small community, so I was really intimidated by walking through some of these doors and trying to ask for help, because it wasn't set up the best, right? There is a lot of silos that exist. So navigating our healthcare system was actually very exhausting sometimes, because you have to re-traumatize yourself sometimes to get the supports that you need, which isn't very person-centered and can be really difficult when somebody wants to know about your pain all the time and not your successes. And so I found that was really difficult, as everybody focused on how broken I was instead of how strong I was. And so I try to switch that narrative quite a bit in everything that I do. And when people are like, oh, you know, I'm such a failure, I've been to treatment 6 times, I'm like, man, that's amazing. I'm like, look at, you've come back like for the 6th time. It shows me that you don't give up easy and that you're fighting for yourself. You should be really proud of yourself. And they're like, oh, I never thought of it that way, right? Because people tell them, you know, setting up a healthy support network is really difficult too, because you know, the people in our lives, when we're struggling, they're constantly telling us how much we've hurt them or how much we failed them. And so, you know, you give up on yourself when when people are giving up on you.
Internalize that.
You internalize those messages, right? And they become your truth. And so really helping people understand what is a healthy support system, right? I always say, how do we create accountability partners? And I have a lot of accountability partners. And I can tell you, when I was struggling, I made sure I picked people in my life who were going to tell me what I wanted to hear because it was
right.
survival, right? Now I have people in my life that I know are going to call me out and actually, get me to kind of look at things differently, which I really need, because sometimes I can get stuck in that place of everybody's against me.
Yeah.
And so when somebody helps me say, well, maybe look at it this way, or if I tell people, if I'm talking to them, can I share something with you about my story? I always ask permission. And it gives people their power back, right? Is it okay if I share something with you? And if they say no, then I don't, right? So, empowering people is really important, I think.
And, such an important part for parents, adults, to access these services and supports and, take that initiative and seek help. But, for children, who are involved in this scenario, the programs and services available, and alongside, their parents getting support, how does that impact them? How does that improve their lives?
I think it's really. I was kind of thinking about this when I was listening to the last people that were just talking, right? From the family center. It's not easy having to ask for help, right? It comes with some shame.
Yeah.
It's not really easy to feel like, you're low income, so this is all that you have to do these things. It's not easy for children. Kids notice these things, kids notice when you're having to get a hot lunch program, or, we're having to cook from the food bank and all of those things. It wasn't my pride, pride. It was really difficult for me, but I'm thankful they were there. But it's also very difficult for kids to navigate when I couldn't go out and buy them what they wanted because I was on such a limited income, right? So I think that also comes with a lot of things for parents to navigate as a mom, right? When you have to access these services as a single parent, it's not always easy to do. I'm so thankful they were there. They changed my life. They made things so that I could be a mom, right? So that I could show up for my kids. But it was difficult navigating having to do those things because it's intergenerational poverty, right? Like I remember as a kid going to school and having to get food from the food bank to go to school for my lunches, right? And these kids coming to school with really nice lunches, right? And so you feel those things. You can't help but internalize those things when you're living in a place of poverty. It can be really difficult to navigate having to do things like that all the time and not having the money to just do what you want to do, right? Always depending on help. It can be a little difficult sometimes. Really thankful it's there, but at the same time, navigating that with your kids so they're helping them understand why you have to access these services is not always easy for children.
Yeah, and my next question, with how do parents have these conversations with kids? It's important for them to know, but how can they approach it? Because as much as there's an opportunity to get support from the community, how can parents tell their kids and have that relationship?
It wasn't easy at first. I didn't really know much about my finances, right? Like I just knew it, like I didn't know how to have those conversations. And actually Empower You, taking a financial literacy class, actually helped me to know how to have conversations with my kids about money, because I wasn't taught to have those conversations. But when I took this Empower You class, I realized how important it was to pass that knowledge on to my children so they had financial knowledge for when they grew up and became adults. And so I actually sat down with the table with them and said, Mom's not capable of working right now. I'm really focusing on, getting better, and I'm just, this is what our finances are, and sitting down with them and helping them understand, how I had to budget, right? Like, it was really important for me, for my kids to eat out once a month, right? Like for us to order pizza. Yeah, right. And what I realized with financial literacy which was really beautiful to me and changed things for me. It was like we'd order pizza. Well, I was a mother of 4 kids, so you can imagine it was like over $100 for us to order food. And they said, "Why don't you make pizza together?" And I was like, "Huh," like that's actually beautiful, right? So then we were in the kitchen together, and they were learning to cook with me, and it was way more fun than ordering pizza, right? Because they got cooking skills, and we were able to sit as a family together and do something together. So that became actually way more fun than ordering pizza. So it was something where I learned that,
They're resilient.
yeah, you don't always have to have those specific things to make things good, right? You can make things good by doing different things. And yeah, I think like we've really grown as a family that way. We, once a year, we do this outing on New Year's Day, the coldest day of the year.
Yeah.
And as a family, we gather and we cook hot soup and we make bannock and we buy a bunch of candy and we go out and stand in front of Hope Mission. And my grandchildren have been doing this with me now for 3 years, and they come and hand out the candy and stuff. And just the happiness that I see from the people that we're serving to see children is really beautiful, because I know a lot of them miss their children. I know what it was like being there without my kids, and trying to navigate my way back to them was really difficult. So you can see the smile on their faces when children are handing them candy. So I try to pass this knowledge on to my family of how to take care of your community. And so I think because we were so taken care of that, I want to pass that on to others and say, it gave me hope to do that with my children, because intergenerational change started to change, right? Like because of the support systems I had in place, it helped me start to break some of those barriers that I had experienced. And so that's what I'm trying to do as a mother today is break some of those systems that were put in place for me without me wanting them to be put in place for me, right? So, and that's because of the community surrounding us as a family and showing me that people do care, and and people making their donations and stuff. Like it was so beautiful to me to be able to go and to thank people, because they don't get that all the time. They just make these donations and they don't really know where their dollars go. So I used to go around with my son carrying him and saying, thanking people. We were a huge part of United Way campaign and got to be on posters. And, to me, it was just beautiful to show people, how when you help somebody, you can create change for people.
Yeah, it's incredible to hear how how resilient kids are and how they can impact your journey and support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they were so strong. Like I get emotional about my kids because they've been through a lot with me, right? And I had to watch my own children struggle with substance misuse and mental health, and trying to navigate that with my children was really difficult. I had a daughter who was self-harming. I have, I had a son who's an alcoholic. I have my other daughter was overeating. And so there was like all of this mental health happening for them and for me. And so trying to navigate that with them while I was trying to heal my mental health is really hard, right? Because as a mom, I caused that pain, right? That's what I seen for myself, is like I caused that pain for my children. And everybody always tries to say, "Oh, just forgive yourself. It's okay." And I'm like, those words are easy to say, but when you're watching the outcome from things that happened, I had to work really hard to get to that place of self-forgiveness to help help my kids, right? And the changes that they've made in their life today is just so beautiful, right? But that's because of the supports that we had along the way. Like my kids all took financial literacy too through Empower You. So, I got bank accounts for my grandkids and teaching them how to save money. And there's just so many beautiful things. Like my kids all have their education and they're all working in the helping field, right?
Oh.
So that says a lot to me, right? My daughter is just recently celebrated 9 months clean, and and it's just so beautiful to be able to have my child back, right? And she says a lot of the time, like, it's from me never giving up on her, right? And so I'm glad that I never gave up on myself and started to fight for myself, because it changed my children's lives, right? So Yeah.
You know, such positive experiences, you know, amidst all the challenges.
Yeah.
You know, through your life and your journey and these, you know, these experiences you're sharing with us, how do you bring that to your role at the Henwood Center?
Oh, I share the stories. As somebody who I was a peer support worker for 9 years with Alberta Health Services before I became an Indigenous wellness coordinator, and I really learned how my story creates hope. And so I started sharing my story, and it wasn't easy at first, right? When you look at your past, it's not difficult to go into your it's difficult to go into your past. And I had a lot of anger, but when people help me understand and navigate that past, in our culture we say that we were spirits who chose to come and have a human experience, and we chose our life before we got here. And I was like, there's no way I chose this life, right? And I actually think about it and I'm like, yeah, I did choose this life. I chose it for a reason, right? I chose to go through these hardships and these difficult times so that I could show up for people in a good way. So I actually really appreciate what I went through as in my life, right? And I thank my mom. Then I'm thankful I chose her, right? She gave me some things that helped me be who I am today. And so once I was able to change that thinking and see my past as a gift instead of a mistake and share that with others, it helps them kind of look at their past a little different. And when I'm sharing with them, I always focus on the change that I made, right? To help them know it's possible, because we get so stuck and I'm like, hey, I've been there. You know, I know what it's like to be stuck in that place. It's really difficult when you're feeling so hopeless. And how can I help you navigate that? You know, so just really listening, you know, and showing up and sharing your experience and laughter, you know, and showing love and kindness and empathy. It makes such a difference in people's lives if you show up in a good way.
And, you know, how do these programs, you know, all powerful in themselves, how does that really support, you know, all the people that are coming in and need the support? Can you speak to a little bit about how powerful they are, these programs, and how, totally, excuse me, but yeah.
It's okay. They are, it's, when I watch people go through the same programs I've gone through myself, and I see the change in them, it's so beautiful to see. People don't know, like, we need a leg up, you know, like we need somebody to kind of say, hey, I'm here for you. And it really makes incredible change. Like, I've seen people, like, for me, because somebody gave me a chance, I was able to educate myself and, you know, continue to go on and get a job, you know, and know that I could have a job even if I had a criminal record. It was scary for me when I had a criminal record. I'm like, no one's going to hire me. I have a criminal record. And people actually helped me see that didn't have to be my barrier. And that, like, I also I work across the province also for restorative justice. So I do a lot of support with people coming out of the justice system and helping them navigate those systems the way I did when I went through that program. And the hope that I start to see becomes instilled in them because of being able to get the counseling that's available to them, or financial literacy, or, you know, there's helping them navigate those systems and understand how to be advocates for themselves, right? When you learn that you have a voice, man, that's a really cool thing. When you're like, hey, I can actually say, hey, I don't like that. You know, that doesn't work for me. You know, you're allowed to say that. Or even changing people. I see people start to change their language. I call it drinking the Kool-Aid of recovery. I'm always like, oh, you drank the Kool-Aid, hey? Because how they speak about themselves and how they speak about others shifts. And I see people actually want to volunteer and give back in the community. And that's what we did in drug treatment court, is people actually had to do volunteer services. And when they start volunteering, they volunteer at the food bank or the different things that are happening around Edmonton. And I help them. They begin to understand how that program actually saves lives when they start volunteering and giving back. So it makes you want to be part of change. And so I've seen people do that. that leave treatment. They're like, how can we come back and help? Like, this program changed my life. How can we help others? So it's that pay it forward. I think once you get through that place of darkness and you have people surround you with light and love, you actually want to continue to give that back to others. So I see that in people being able to show up not only for themselves and their families, but their community. And so that's beautiful to see.
And one thing that really stuck with me that you've been talking about is taking your power back. Is there a specific, client, program user, or story that really sticks out to you and that really comes back to taking your power?
I think Empower You.
Yeah.
When I took Empower You, my credit score was like 360, and nobody taught me how important a credit score is or how important it is to not deposit checks that are not good into a bank account, right? Like those skills weren't taught to me. And when I took Empower You, I learned about needs and wants. I learned about budgeting. I actually learned about more community resources because it was more than financial literacy. We actually were a bunch of women getting together and sharing our knowledge with each other. So it really taught me I wasn't alone. And the financial coaches taught me that I could rebuild my credit score and how to talk to creditors. And I think the most beautiful story out of that is I worked as a financial facilitator for 13 years, and it's really inspiring for people to hear that I had a credit score of 360 and now I have a credit score of 720, right? But the biggest thing for me in all of that was being able to walk into the bank when I needed to get a line of credit, and they're like, and the stigma was there. I felt it, right? And they're like, we're going to have to pull your credit score. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's going to be good. You can pull it. So having that confidence, I began to feel like I had power over my money instead of money having power over me. Yeah. Because it had power over me for a long time living in poverty. And now I know how to have a savings account, and I know how to budget, and I know how to do those things. So I think that's something that really helped me change a lot. I was talking a little bit about how difficult it was, though, when I started to be able to go back into the workforce and losing some of these subsidies. Was really difficult because I went into a different tax bracket.
Yeah.
And so once you're in that different tax bracket, you don't qualify for some of these subsidies that are available. So actually that was really fearful for me. I was actually really scared about not having a job, right? Because I was like, I'm going to lose all these subsidies that have been helping me for a really long time. So I actually ended up having to get 2 jobs to be able to still continue to have my kids in sports and stuff. So I think that some of that stuff was a little bit difficult to navigate, but I was able to, learn how to do without it. But that fear of losing those subsidies when I had them for so long was really difficult change for me, or going off of Alberta Works. I didn't realize how much Alberta Works was doing for me with my medical coverage. Right. And so having to pay for medical now and change into that system, these systems are all difficult to navigate when you're moving through them. Right. And so I always kind of help people understand that, like, if you get a job, here's something that could happen. Right. And to be aware of that. And so people are thankful for that. I think that knowledge is power. Right. To have those things explained to you helps you understand when you're losing one system, when all the subsidies were gone and everything was gone and I was just working, it was very different for me. I had to learn how to budget in a different way. So I try to pass that knowledge on to others that are doing the same thing.
Just shows the need for the support and the programs through the entire process, right?
Yeah.
And those transitions that are really hard.
Yeah. Even low-income housing, I didn't qualify for low-income housing anymore, and I had to go into market rate housing. That was really difficult, right? Like trying to pay full rent now from subsidized rent. And like I said, like I had to change my budget, right? And change things around. And a lot of the supports kind of started to be like, sorry, we can't help you anymore. You don't fit, right? And so even watching my child who just turned 18 a couple of days ago, trying to navigate, the system for his mental health was really difficult for me, right? Because there was just the waiting lists were so long to try to get the supports that he needed. And to see him kind of feel hopeless, right, from the things not being there that he needed. So I think, yeah, like that transition part is also another piece that we need to be more aware of, is how difficult that transition can be for people.
Probably is such a dynamic experience for most people, from the journey of recovery all the way to independence and the barriers that you face as you try to improve.
Even trying to have a job, like, you know, like showing up every day when I hadn't done that for a really long time. You know, I was stuck in a very unhealthy world, and, you know, in domestic violence, and, you know, even trying to navigate healthy relationships, trying to make new friends, trying to make friends was really hard, right? Trying to leave those people behind. I always say sometimes, like, it's like a witness protection program. Like, you have to change so many things when you're trying to navigate recovery. Like I said, it's really complex, and we have to give people the space that they need when they're trying to face all of these changes for themselves.
It sounds like it's almost every aspect of your life. So like you said earlier, you can't expect that change to happen quickly.
No.
And
Well,
yeah.
I navigated mental health and with addiction, right? That's how I chose to take care of my mental health, is I numbed that pain with substances. So it's not easy to walk away from that. It actually gives you something. And I remind people of that. We don't stay because it's fun, right? We stay because it's actually taking away a lot of our pain. And well, I took away a lot of my pain. It helped me stay numb, and it helped me stay in that state, right, where I didn't actually have to look at my pain.
Right.
And so when I took that away, and I actually had to feel my emotions and navigate being sober, and start to feel all that guilt and shame and all of those things, that how I had harmed the community with dealing drugs, and, you know, and committing crimes and stuff like that. That was really a lot of shame that comes with that. And I had to learn how to feel those feelings. And even I had a concurrent disorder, right? So actually being able to know that I actually needed to take medication for the rest of my life. I didn't like that, right? That I had to take medication for the rest of my life. So I'm thankful that I had the right supports in place that helped me understand that I have a trauma brain, that my brain thinks differently, and I need support, and I need to take medication. That's not an easy thing, to know that you have to take medication for the rest of your life, right? And so, but once I accepted that, I seen that it helped, right? Like I have to have those things in place. So navigating healthcare systems, right? And doctors, and trying to be on the right medication and stuff is really complex too.
You know, there's probably so many people who have similar experiences as you've gone through.
Yeah.
You know, for someone who's struggling, dealing with mental health and addiction, you know, what advice do you have for them on their recovery journey? And how can United Way be a resource?
United Way is a resource to so many different things. Helping them know they're not alone, helping people feel safe to say, I'm not doing well.
Yeah.
Right? It's really scary to say that, because there's a lot of stigma around mental health. And so helping them know that it's okay to say, I'm not okay. Right? And knowing that there's support systems out there for them. Right? And being able to put voice to those things and talk about it. I know for me as an Indigenous person, we were taught to be silent. We don't talk about things. And I think a lot of that happens in a lot of cultures, is you don't talk about your mental health. There's a lot of stigma and shame around that. So teaching them that it's safe to have these conversations. Like I said, my mom, I never told anybody what was happening at home, because I didn't want to lose my mom. Like I said, I loved her. I didn't see what she was doing as wrong, right? So helping people understand that it's okay to say I'm not safe, right? So putting voice to things, if we can support people to do that in a good way, is going to create a lot of change for people, and not take away the stigma. The stigma is so bad out there, especially when we try to access the healthcare services that are out there, and the way we're talked to, the way. So even I think people that are in these places, I always think education is important, having people with lived experience and come out and share their journeys, and share with people what it was like when you certain language that you use, right? Like if you say things to people in a certain way, it can actually stop them from accessing help. So even the people that are working in these support systems, teaching them how to have cultural humility, right? So I think we're not the ones that always have to continue to educate ourselves. I think there's people out there that need to learn how to educate themselves as well in these places so that people can show up in a good way. So I think it's not just the people that are struggling that have to learn. It's the support systems in place that have to learn with us.
Totally. Yeah. Be able
Yeah.
to create those safe spaces with safe people so that people feel like they can share, like you said,
Yeah.
and then speak it out loud that they might not be okay.
Creating those safe spaces is
Yeah.
like really important for people. Yeah.
And you did talk about some of the programs that you've used from United Way. What programs today do you think people should be accessing from United Way who are having mental health and addiction challenges?
Well, I know that CMHA has, the counseling services there. They offer the sessions there that are really good. Even today, I was looking at some of the Boys and Girls Club for kids, right? Like my son had a big, and he changed his life, right? Because he didn't have a male role model in his life. So even having that, letting children know that there's places for them too, not just adults, right? And I was looking at one of them you were talking about, All In for Youth, right? All In for Youth sounds like an incredible program. And Empower You, like letting people know that there's places, and not every school has these things that I'm talking about, which is unfortunate, right? It's only in certain areas. And so I guess just making more awareness out there that these programs are available, 211, being able to phone a place that helps you know where these services are available. So, I think I don't think that we promote it enough. The other thing that I really notice is a lot of these places, people don't feel like they can access them because they're not low income, or they don't think that they have lived experience.
Yeah.
Everybody has lived experience. We all have lived experience. But I think that the way that we've set things up is you have to have mental health or this or this or this or this in order to access these services. So I think that better education around that this is for everybody. It doesn't have to be one specific population that accesses these services. So educating people to understand that this is accessible for everyone. And making it more accessible for everyone, not just people who are low income. And like I said, like professionals have mental health and substance use issues too, right? So helping them know that space is for them too. I think we could promote it in a better way, that it's for everyone.
Yeah. All struggle is valid.
Yeah,
No
exactly.
matter your
Right. No matter
situation.
what it is. Right. Yeah.
And there's, like we were talking, there's so many different ways that people approach helping someone who's challenging. For our viewers and for everybody watching, if there's one thing that they can do to support someone who's going through mental health challenges or addiction, what can that be?
One big thing. That's a
Hard to sum up.
to sum it up. Yeah. I think just self-education is really important to help understand your community. Educating yourself on what's going on in your community is going to be really important for you to know how to show up for people. Because if you don't understand and you're stuck in your values and your belief systems that were given to you from a child, that, some of them can be harmful. So challenging yourself to look at your own stigma and your own cultural biases, I think is really going to support others to show up for people in a good way. And taking that educating yourself, like I said, educating yourself on your community and volunteering. I think volunteering is a really good way to get to know your community. So I think those are some of the things that are really important to do. That's what I had to do, right? Because I had my own stigma because of what I'd went through with poverty. I didn't trust people. And when I started to let down some of those walls, I seen that there's actually some really caring people out there. So that are showing up in a good way. So I think that's that's something that helped me, is to work through some of those things. So I think that's important for people to do, to know how to show up for others. Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, thank you for being a part of that education
Yeah.
through something like the podcast that people can listen to and learn about not just services and what United Way does, or just learn about what's going on in the community and how it impacts people directly.
Well,
So,
and it does, right? It changes. It doesn't just change the person that you're helping, because it changes the family, right? And mental health and substance misuse is a family disease, right? So when I was unwell, it was affecting not only my community, but my family, right? So it's generational. So when you change that one person's life, just know that you're changing it for their children and changing it for the community. So you just know that it's bigger than the person in front of you. And I think that's something to remember.
that's great.
Yeah.
Well, Pamela, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your incredibly inspiring story. Like you had mentioned, these kind of stories do bring hope to people. So thank you so much for
You're welcome.
sharing.
Yeah, for sure.
And thank you as well to the team at United Way of Alberta Capital Region for helping make this conversation happen. Doing local good starts with you. To find out how you can help build thriving, resilient communities, you can head to myunitedway.ca/GenNext or check out the links in these show notes. Together, we can all make sure that no one is left behind. And if you like this episode, always make sure to like and share and subscribe. And on behalf of myself, Natalie, and Rama, and the whole Gen Next cabinet, thank you all for listening to Do Local Good.